underneath so much of the resistance and the gunk that slows us down in growing our businesses is a resistance or a nervousness or a push-pull relationship with visibility. I love to survey my most successful clients, the clients that I watch go to 6 figures really quickly, pop into the multiple 6 figures. And I ask them, what's like the one thing that had to shift inside of you to get you going as quickly as you're going? And they all agree across the board. There's something about really getting comfortable with visibility that's allowed them to really pop through a lot of the gunk that holds other entrepreneurs back. And I'd say for me too, really in the process of building a multi-7-figure business in just a matter of a few years, my ability to get more comfortable being visible here with you, right, is really like, in many ways, it's the biggest muscle that we embrace and develop to get where we want to go. Today, I want to make sure to get you some mindset shifts around visibility so that we can get you as comfortable going out there and being visible as possible. As you're willing to get more visible, the easier your business is going to get. Not everybody's going to be interested in hiring you, right? So the more people you can get in front of, the more potential clients you're going to reach, and the more you're going to actually be in front of the people who actually are waiting for you. So what are the mindset shifts that you can make to have more fun being visible? Number one, the question I want to ask, and I invite you to please, please, please post below. What do you associate with being more visible that may be holding you back? If I get more visible, if I start impacting more people, what is the worst thing that could happen? What am I most afraid of? And one of the things that's come up is that you associate visibility with a sense of having to take on a lot more responsibility. Okay, visibility equals responsibility. Is that something that you have? Then we will oftentimes associate that responsibility with more work, more stress, more anxiety, more things to have to take care of. Okay, so then the next question becomes, what are you associating with responsibility? The most successful people on the planet have a shit ton of responsibility. Let's be honest. They may have a lot of responsibility, but they also have a lot of freedoms that you and I don't have. In fact, the more responsibility I've taken on over the last 10 years in my business and my company, the more freedom I have. It's the reason we become entrepreneurs in the first place. So for us to start to kind of reprogramming around any resistance that we have to responsibility, period, what would it be like to just allowing more impact, more responsibility that doesn't necessarily have to be heavy. It doesn't necessarily have to be more work. What if, as you grow, what if the more responsibility you were willing to take on, the less you were ever doing anything alone? So my first invitation to you is to shift any nervousness you have around having to take all that responsibility and shift it into a knowingness that responsibility equals freedom. Okay, so write that down. Responsibility equals freedom. The more responsibility I'm willing to take, the more freedom I can have. I'm putting a stake in the ground for every single one of us to be able to embrace responsibility. And then in turn, as we embrace that responsibility, we're willing to be more visible too. Another piece that many of you reported on was that being more visible will bring about judgment from other people. Duh, of course. And there's truth to all of these. That's why they're lodged in so deep, because they're actually true. That's why they mess with us so much. So let's just unpack this for a moment and just let us know below. What is it that scares us so much about being judged by other people? It's so real. It's a trick to stay out of the fear associated with being judged. I'll just share a little bit about how I've grappled with this myself. I'll never forget one of my spiritual teachers talked about how we all fear judgment so deeply. But when you really look at it, you really look at the people on the planet who are the most successful, who have created the most impact, They are highly judged people. There's almost always people pushing up against them in some way. In fact, if you don't have anybody pushing back against you, if you're not creating any amount of resistance, if you don't have any haters, what are you standing for? There's a trick to, for me, it's kind of like a shortcut to stay out of the fear of being judged. And that is to create deep, really deep sisterhood allies with other women entrepreneurs. The women in our training programs oftentimes will team up, and when they find themselves looping in, feeling like they're up against a small part of themselves, they always out themselves really quickly on the Facebook page or with each other so that they can keep each other out of that loop of taking on other people's judgments. So that trick, right, to really staying out of the fear of judgment is to be sure you have enough support from people who will actually remind you who you are. I have a very close-knit group of people myself that I reach out to when I start to doubt myself. And I do not hesitate. There is no way I'd be reaching over 100,000 people right now if it weren't for a dozen or so of my closest entrepreneurial colleagues that I met through enrolling in training programs, right? Because when you're in training programs with other entrepreneurial colleagues, you have the same language that you're learning to use to apply to your business. And so community is key. Don't try to do it alone. That's the way you're going to be able to sidestep that looming fear of others judging you. Let's talk about the third mindset shift. Okay, so we've talked about responsibility, we've talked about judgment. The third one I know has definitely been a part of my journey and a part of many of my clients' journeys in terms of saying yes to more visibility is the fear that visibility is going to come with some level of negative impact on our health. More visibility is going to equal burnout. Do you have a way that anxiety and stress really affect you physically that you're most afraid of? And many of us are introverted. I know this will surprise some of you, but I am not 100% extrovert. I'm much more of an ambivert. Okay, so I have a very strong introvert in me, and I know many of you do too. There's a way in which we have to learn to take care of ourselves when it comes to visibility. My journey around this has been to really start to understand that, the way energy works, it's like the ocean. The ocean rises, the tide rises, and the tide falls. Energy expands and energy contracts. The more I allow myself to expand and be more visible, and that can juice me, right? There's a little bit of adrenaline in a healthy way that flows through. There's the feel-good hormones, the oxytocin that happens when I can feel the love flowing out of me and then back into me from reading your comments. And then what happens is, at the end of the day, or sometimes even right after a Facebook Live or right after I get off stage, in front of hundreds of people, what happens oftentimes is I'll feel the energy start to contract, and it's scary. It's like, oh my gosh, what just happened? I just opened myself up too big. And what I've learned to do rather than resist that is to ride the waves and trust the expansion and trust the contraction. So my invitation for you with this piece around burnout and worrying that visibility can affect our health is to trust the contraction. My trick is I put on a hoodie right here. I always do this after my Facebook Lives. I just put my hoodie on and I kind of womb up and I'm like, okay, I did it, I did it. And then I'll read the comments. I'm like, oh, good. Somebody got something out of it. And then, I just go inside and I'm just like, oh, okay, good. Just like nourish. So when you associate visibility with a sense of responsibility, keep in mind that more responsibility actually will and does bring about a lot more freedom. And when you notice that you're resisting visibility because of judgment, make sure that you're tracking like your 3P. You got to have 3 sisters by your side. Your clients are waiting for you. They're not just waiting for someone like you. They're actually waiting for you. Mwah.